Welcome, my fellow weeaboos, to another Naruto Strength Ranking video. I already made the most accurate and complete Naruto Strength Ranking of all time, so if you haven't seen that already, I recommend checking it out. But it was so huge that I couldn't fit quite everything in that one video. I mentioned the tailed beasts and the Jinchuriki in that video, but I didn't go into detail due to their lack of showings in the manga. This video will be going more in depth on how strong I think they are, even using some anime scenes to go into even more detail. I'll explain how I think they stack up against the other characters in Naruto, and how I think they compare to each other as well. Kurama seemed to think the tailed beasts are ranked in power by the amount of tails they have, but 8 Tails seemed to disagree with that, so I'm not quite sure if the rankings are really that simple. I'll start by going through each tailed beast and Jinchuriki from 1 Tails up. When Part 1 Gaara was in control of the 1 Tails Shukaku, he seemed to be below Gamabunta, as he got his arm lopped right off. But after Gaara used Playing Possum Jutsu and Shukaku gained control, he was able to use his full power and was clearly above Gamabunta at that point. We know Gaara's father, Rasa, was able to subdue Shukaku with his Golden Sand, but it was stated that the Golden Sand countered Shukaku's, so it's questionable if he should really be below Rasa, who I had in the low Kage tier. In the War Arc, Shukaku was able to damage and almost seal Blind Sage Mode Madara with the help of Gaara and force him to use his Susanoo. He was able to block a Susanoo attack as well, and implied his specialty is his defensive powers. That same Susanoo attack knocked War Arc Gaara back, but he should have been pretty tired by that point in the war. Yugito in base is faster than Hidan, and as an Edo she was able to clash with and push back Killer Bee. As Edos, the Jinchuriki should normally be slightly weaker than their living versions, but they were being fed chakra by Obito through Chakra Rod similar to what Nagato did with the Paths of Pain, and were able to use the precognition abilities of the Sharingan and the visual link of the Rinnegan. This is important to note because Sasuke unlocking the second Tomoe in his Sharingan allowed him to track Haku when before he couldn't. And unlocking the third Tomoe allowed him to react to Naruto using Kurama Chakra when before that he was getting completely blitzed. So each Tomoe seems to allow you to move up a reaction speed tier. And the Jinchuriki went from having no Sharingan at all to having 3 Tomoe Sharingan. The Rinnegan Link actually gives a similar boost, as the Animal Path was able to block an almost point-blank attack from Sage Mode Jiraiya's fastest move due to it, but when it was a one-on-one fight, Sage Jiraiya was able to blitz the Animal Path from a similar distance with just basic Taijutsu. So based off all this, you could try and argue that Edo Jinchuriki's reaction speed should be 4 speed tiers above normal. But even if you don't want to look that far into it, 8 Tails confirmed the Ocular Jutsus were amplifying their Jinchuriki abilities, so they were undoubtedly better than before. Edo Yugito with 1 Tail clashed with Killer Bee again, managing to slash his scarf. But Bee was carrying an injured Naruto and landed what would likely have been a fatal blow if not for her being an Edo. So Edo Yugito should definitely be below Killer Bee. Her, along with all the other Edo Jinchuriki, were about to get sealed by Beast Ink clones, so that's more proof that even in the one-tailed mode, they're all below Bee. In their version 2 cloak states, they all broke out of that sealing jutsu and swarmed and hurt Kurama Cloak Naruto and full Beast Mode Killer Bee. They had a numbers advantage, but their speed and power had to be at least somewhat relative to dodge and hurt Bee and Naruto. In full-tailed Beast state, Yugito overpowered Kakuzu with a paw swipe and had Hidan ducking for cover with her fireball. She seemingly gave them a good fight considering the battlefield is vastly damaged, but she somehow lost off screen. Likely due to Hidan's ability since he was just in skeleton mode, which he only goes into when he gets someone's blood and applies his curse to them. This means Hidan and Kakuzu somehow drew blood from her, which is impressive, but as long as they did, it means they didn't necessarily have the firepower to kill her, since as long as they made her bleed a little bit, Hidan could have just licked her blood and then stabbed himself to finish the job. It's worth noting Yukito went to Turtle Island and trained to access her tailed beast chakra like Naruto and Bee did, but she wasn't stated to be one of the Jinchuriki to have access to the full power of their tailed beast by Danzo. Yagura was the previous 3-tailed Jinchuriki and the 4th Mizukage. In base he clashed with Juzo, a former member of the 7 Ninja Swordsmen turned Akatsuki member, who would likely have been high Jonin tier similar to Zabuza and Hidan. Their scuffle was quickly put to a halt by Itachi's Fireball Jutsu, and Yagura transformed into his version 2 cloak state. In this form he easily pushed back Juzo and had the power to make coral grow on his enemies, which he used to get the better of Itachi and Kurama Cloak Naruto. Juzo managed to partially block his Beast Bomb, but got killed from the blast. Itachi unlocked Amaterasu and used it for the first time to defeat him. Due to his performance, his version 2 state should at bare minimum be low Kage tier, but could easily be mid Kage tier due to how Itachi needed help and had to use Amaterasu. In his Edo version, he showed the ability to use a jutsu that reflected back Killer Bee's and Kurama Cloak Naruto's attack with equal power. But with his eyes amping his reaction speed like I previously mentioned, it's questionable if he could pull this off on characters this fast while in his living state. Even if he could, the strongest person I think he would likely beat with this move is the 3rd Raikage, as this would perfectly counter his 1-finger spear. But the problem is the Raikage doesn't usually start with that move. He starts with 4 fingers, and that move likely won't kill him if reflected. So if he gets hit by Kagura's reflection move, he'll then know not to use his 1-finger spear. And since he has better stamina feats, being able to stalemate the 8 Tails and last 3 days and nights against 10,000 shinobi, he should easily outlast Kagura, if he doesn't slaughter him with his greater speed and power beforehand. So I do not think Kagura belongs above the 3rd Raikage, or anyone in my Haikage tier. Yagura was also stated to be one of the few Jinchuriki to have full control over their tailed beast. However, it's unlikely he was a perfect Jinchuriki, as he was kept under Obito's Genjutsu for years. So either Obito's Genjutsu was just that powerful, or the 3 Tails was not friends with Yagura and didn't feel like breaking him out. The 3 Tails without a host struggled against the filler character Gurren, who had a Crystal Keka Genkai. She was actually pretty strong, getting the better of Kabuto and Part 2 Kakashi, as well as creating a kilometer-wide crystal barrier that Yamato couldn't break through, so it's likely she would be near the bottom of my low Kage tier. In this filler arc, the 3 Tails also created a mist that could cause illusions, and had some sort of space jutsu it could retreat into and send people it swallows to. It had its jutsu overpowered by a combo from base Naruto, Gamakichi, and Gamatatsu, which is pretty embarrassing. The 3 Tails was later defeated by Deidara and Obito without much trouble. But Obito was still pretending to be Toby at the time, and it was likely mostly Deidara who did the heavy lifting, as he said himself. Deidara did note that the 3 Tails was weaker for not having a host, since it didn't have the intelligence to control its power, but I find this statement weird considering tailed beasts have human-level intelligence. I think a better explanation would probably be that they aren't trained to control their chakra like ninjas are, so a Jinchuriki can help them with their chakra control and battle strategy. Roshi lost to Kasame, but Kasame counters Jinchuriki due to his chakra absorption power. His water style doubly counters Roshi's lava style, and he researched his weaknesses beforehand. His Scorching Rocks jutsu was blocked by Kasame, and dodged by Kurama Cloak Naruto and B. Even with his one-tailed Lava Cloak form, Roshi still lost pretty badly to Kasame, so I would definitely put him below Kasame by a good deal. It's hard to say if he should be a full tier down due to all of the advantages Kasame had. In his Lava Cloak, his heat was enough to hurt Kurama Cloak Naruto even when just passing by him, but Naruto did manage to dodge him, catch his punch and tough out the heat, and was about to win with his first attack if Han didn't jump in. This at bare minimum puts him a tier below Kurama Cloak Naruto, which lines up with Kasame being near the top of the tier below that version of Naruto. In his version 2 state, he hurt a full 8-tailed Killer Bee a bit, and in full-tailed beast mode he tossed him around and made Kurama Cloak Naruto struggle with his bite force. This could arguably put him in my high Kage tier, but B was already injured and dealing with multiple other Jinchuriki, and ended up tying him up with his tails, and Kurama Cloak Naruto had the strength to stop his hand from closing and outspeed him. So I would put the full 4 tails below Kurama Cloak Naruto and B, possibly in the same tier, possibly near the top of the tier below. Han is stated to have taijutsu with some of the highest speed and power in the ninja world. He clashed with and pushed back Kurama Cloak Naruto, and sucker kicked him really badly in his one-tailed state. He doesn't have any other showings, but he got stomped by full-tailed beast mode B like the other Jinchuriki, so he should at least be a tier below B. When the full 5 tails was released, it was able to stab full 8-tailed Killer Bee with its horns and knock him back, but it did this while B was already injured and distracted, and was later knocked aside by B when he actually saw it coming. So like the 4 tails, the 5 tails is at best lower down in the same tier as B, but could possibly be around the top of the tier below as well. Udakata in a filler was able to defeat a bunch of ninja chasing him, and deal with the base Naruto attacking him. He did get injured by the ninja chasing him and ran out of chakra, had trouble with some more loser filler shinobi, got overpowered by multiple missed Anbu members, and needed to use his tailed beast chakra to break out of the filler enemy leader Shiranami's jutsu, so I wouldn't put his base form at more than mid to high Jonin tier at that time. As an Edo, he was able to slightly hurt Kurama Cloak Naruto, but he only landed a hit while Naruto was already being knocked back by Yagura's attack. In one-tailed mode he didn't really do anything, and in his version 2 state he performed similar to the other Jinchuriki. In the anime, his version 2 cloak was able to put up a bit of a fight against Pain, but he was clearly at least a tier below him. The full 6 tails has some sort of corrosive breath and was temporarily held off by 6 Gates Guy. I believe 6 Gates Guy should be next to where I had Kakashi in the mid-Kage tier, and the 6 tails should likely be above that spot since I don't think Guy would be able to defeat it due to the stress the 6 Gates puts on him and his lack of progress against the 6 tails. Guy was also impressed by the destructive power of the tailed beast bombs that could erase mountains, so at the very least his destructive power is below that. Fu during the filler tuning exams with their Jonin escorts was the first team to arrive at the second exam location by a wide margin, even ahead of Neji, Lee, and Tenten, who came in second, and easily defeated a giant scorpion that was beating Sakura, Ino, and Choji at the same time. though Sakura managed to one-shot one later. She also sensed Gaara's Sand Eye, which even her Jonin escorts didn't. She can shoot webs that she can use as a net, and create a cocoon to hold off her and Gaara's tailed beasts from being extracted. She can breathe out scaled powder that can blind her enemies, and can fly with the wings she can sprout on her back. In the anime, it was implied she was defeated by Kakuzu and Hidan. As an Edo, she was able to dodge Killer Bee, but she had her Ocular Jutsu helping her, and she would have been hit by Bee's follow-up move if it wasn't for the linked Renegon vision. The Seven Tails is arguably the strongest Biju after the 8 and 9 tails due to its tail count, but it got slapped aside along with the 2, 3, 5, and 6 tails by Biju mode Naruto. 8 tails helped a bit, but just 50% of the 9 tails was enough to beat up the other 5-tailed beasts at once, and was able to counter their charged up combined beast bomb as well. Clearly none of the other tailed beasts hold a candle to 9 tails, even at half strength. Based off all this information, I'm gonna rank the tailed beasts in Jinchuriki in order of how strong I think they are. At the bottom would be Fu and Utakata. They showed limited attack power and don't have anything to prove they're above high Jonin tier. Gaara in full Shukaku mode while not using Playing Possum Jutsu didn't really do anything besides get his arm cut off by Gamabunta, but Gamabunta mentioned how solid he was and his sheer size should put him above the other two. Base Yukito and Yagura would be next. Yagura was the Mizukage and could take on Jozu, who was at least high Jonin level, and Yukito is faster than Hidan, who could outduel Asuma and keep up with Kakashi, so she's at least peak high Jonin to low Kage tier. The mindlessly rampaging Three Tails would be next, as its power is at least low Kage tier, being too much for Gurren, Kabuto, or Kakashi, but it having trouble with Gurren, being overpowered by base Naruto's combo attack with Gamakichi and Gamatatsu, and being easily defeated by Deidara, who I have in low Kage tier, limits it to that tier. One-tailed Roshi with his Lava Cloak and Han would be next, as they both hurt Kurama Cloak Naruto, and Han managed to tag him, though Naruto was focused on Roshi. They would likely be somewhere in the low Kage tier. Gaara at the beginning of Shippuden would also likely be in the low Kage tier since he lost to Deidara in a close fight. Up next would be all of the Jinchuriki in their version 2 states. They should be in the mid Kage tier since they could give Itachi, Pain, Kurama Cloak Naruto, full 8-tailed Killer Bee, War Art Kakashi, and Six Gates Guy trouble. They're definitely below most of them, but the fact that they gave them trouble means there shouldn't be too large of a difference, probably not more than one tier. Next up would be Yukito releasing the Two Tails. It wasn't stated she was one of the Jinchuriki who had access to the full power of their tailed beast, so in this form she shouldn't be as strong as a full powered Two Tails, but she would still likely be above a normal version 2 state. She was able to overpower Kakuzu, who's in my low Kage tier, but ended up losing to him and Hidan together, and possibly only went down due to Hidan's jutsu. So I think her being in the mid Kage tier makes the most sense. The One Tails at full power was clearly above Gamabunta, who should at least be low Kage tier. And while he was suppressed by Rasa, who I have at low Kage tier, Rasa's jutsu countered him and he had a whole village backing him. You could use that to try and argue Shukaku should only be low Kage tier, but how well Shukaku did against Madara, his ability to do tailed beast bombs, and the fact he should logically be above a tailed beast version 2 state, should put him at least in mid Kage tier in my opinion. If you're set on having Rasa above Shukaku, I think that would just upscale Rasa if anything. I would say Shukaku and all the other tailed beasts at full power fighting intelligently, I'm looking at you Isobu, should be in my upper mid Kage tier to lower high Kage tier. This is further backed up by the Six Tails fighting Six Gates Guy, who should at least be mid Kage tier. I actually think the lower high Kage tier probably makes the most sense, but things like the Three Tails going down so easily to Deidara, Shukaku getting suppressed by Rasa, and a seemingly almost full power Two Tails losing to Kakuzu and Hidan makes me question that. It's possible those tailed beasts could be weaker, while the tailed beasts like the 4 and 5 tails who managed to damage full 8-tailed Killer Bee and match Kurama Cloak Naruto in strength are just stronger, but I do think it has a lot to do with matchups. For example, the 3 tails was just swimming while Deidara was bombing him from above, while if the 7 tails who could fly was focused on Deidara, he would probably be screwed. I do think any of the tailed beasts at full power using their tailed beast bombs are high Kage tier and destructive power, but it's possible characters that are weaker power-wise can end up defeating them. At the very least, they should all be below the 3rd Raikage, since he stalemated the 8 tails, who is above the other tailed beasts as confirmed by Kurama. If you want to know which tailed beast is the strongest besides the 8 and 9 tails, I think it's between 2 of them. If you believe more tails equals more power, then the 7 tails should be the strongest. Plus it can fly, which is a big advantage. If you want to go by feats, I think the 4 tails Son Goku would be the strongest, since it did the best against Bee and Naruto. I do think the 1 through 7 tails are all supposed to be relative in strength to each other. For me, the biggest question is why the 3 tails was so dumb and weak before. Well, I think that's about all there is to talk about when it comes to the tailed beasts in Jinchuriki's power. If you want to know more about the 8 tails, 9 tails, Gaara, Killer Bee, or Naruto's power, I recommend you go watch my Ultimate Naruto Strength and Power tier list. I go over them a lot more in that list. If you like the video, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe. Until the next video, farewell.